So thank you all for joining us tonight. This is our September lecture here at RGSQ. And as in tradition, the September lecture is hosted by the Young Geographers Group. Tonight, I am joined by the fantastic Sophie online, joining us all the way from Tonga. And she is going to talk to us about her journey as a marine scientist, as a geography graduate, and as someone with a deep passion for looking after our oceans and promoting ocean conservation and ocean communication, really, like big science communication aspect, I think, to the work that you've been doing over the past few years. A little bit of housekeeping for those in the room. If you need the bathroom tonight, they're located at the back. In the event of an emergency, follow someone who looks like they know what they're doing so we can evacuate safely. Our event is being recorded. So for those of you online, if you do not want to be shown in the recording, please make sure your video is off. And a bit of an overview, I suppose, of our format tonight. Sophie will be doing her presentation, followed by a sort of intermediary question asking opportunity. And then we'll have a big session for questions at the end of our presentation. So I think that's enough for me, Sophie. I might just hand over straight to you.
Amazing.
Dazzle us with your presentation.
Thank you. We were just remarking on the fact that the last time I saw Giselle was maybe several years ago now, when I gave a talk sort of halfway through my university degree, and we're remarking on the fact that we haven't seen each other for a few years and how our careers have changed and developed since then. So I also want to give a big thank you to Giselle for organising this all and the World Geography Society for having me. As you said, I'm a graduate of the University of Queensland, and one of my majors was geography in addition to marine science. But you'll hear all about that shortly. I'm just going to share my screen and get started with a couple of slides to introduce myself before I show a film that I made at the end of my scholarship year. So just at the beginning, though, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today, virtually and in person, and also the traditional owners of the land that I had the opportunity to train on throughout the year. And training for what, you may ask? So I had the really special opportunity, I had a life-changing opportunity, and that opportunity was the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society and their scholarship program. And this is a global diving scholarship designed to upskill young leaders in the underwater world. That's their mission, that's their goal. And I felt really fortunate to be in that position where I was granted that opportunity. I also want to say I apologize if my voice is a little hoarse. I have a bit of a flu-y cold thing at the moment, so I'm kind of glad this is on Zoom, actually. So with the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society, each year they select 3 young scholars from around the world. So one from North America, one from Europe, and one from Australasia. And I was lucky enough to be the Australasian Scholar last year. And these scholars spend a year of intensive travel all around the world, working with leaders in their field of interest. Anything relating to the oceans, relating to diving. This could be diving medicine, it could be conservation, it could be marine archaeology. It's incredibly broad what you have the capacity to do with this scholarship program, and that's the beauty of it. The networks and the connections that this group can facilitate is really quite incredible. So again, very, very grateful to have had this opportunity. So let's step back a little bit though, and give a bit of context to how I got here. So I grew up in far north Queensland in a small regional city called Cairns on the Great Barrier Reef. I'm sure many of you have been there. And this was really foundational to my upbringing because I had this beautiful place as my playground. The Great Barrier Reef was my playground. And that sense of adventure carries through into my life and into my science and the way that I move through the world. I had the opportunity to, undergo a range of outdoor pursuits. I grew up working on boats and feeling very comfortable with the water. So this was just a big part of my upbringing. This sort of took a bit more of a turn though around the age of 16, when 16 or 17 in the 2017 bleaching events, the mass bleaching event all over the world, but particularly on the Great Barrier Reef. And I went out with my mum and saw a reef that I had dived on for my whole life turn white. It had turned white and it was undergoing this stress response called bleaching. And that was sort of the catalyst moment that this curiosity transformed into a passion for conservation. And since then, I've pursued science and science communication in everything that I do through volunteering and working with not-for-profit organisations. I even did a stint in the Queensland Youth Parliament. So not just going through traditional scientific routes, but exploring a wide variety of ways that we can work to protect our oceans. Happy to take questions on any of those topics later on. So yeah, that answers a little bit about how a girl from far north Queensland became the Australasian Scholar. I was awarded the scholarship at the age of 21. I'm 23 now. And I just graduated from the University of Queensland with majors in marine science and geography and minors in political science and communications. And I really believe it's this like multifaceted skill set that's like so central to geography and is like I'm kind of passionate about, is like been really central to like the type of work that I've been able to do. So without further ado, that's a little brief intro to me, and I've got a half-hour presentation that I'm gonna share, but I actually, in addition to the presentation, made a film at the end of my scholarship year. It's a 15-minute film, and I would absolutely love to be able to share it with you. And I thought that could be a really nice introduction, and then allow you guys to potentially ask some intermediary questions. So I'm going to share that now.
Our oceans are home to so much life. They support us in so many interconnected ways. The air we breathe, the food we eat, our climate, and our livelihoods. But our oceans are changing right before our eyes. I grew up diving on the Great Barrier Reef with my family, and have always had a deep affinity for the ocean. But in 2017, a normal trip out to our local islands turned into a mission to document a crisis. Meadows of once vibrant, healthy corals had turned a ghostly white. I didn't know it at the time, but this moment catalyzed my passion for marine conservation and science communication. And so I enrolled in a marine science degree to build the skills to protect this environment. My passion for conservation found me working at Coral Watch, a global citizen science program dedicated to monitoring reef health worldwide. Yet the pressures on our oceans continued to grow. As I was learning about these challenges, I knew that I wanted to use my skills to help inspire change. My name is Sophie Kalkowski-Pope, and I am the 2023 Australasian Scholar of the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society. This is my story of a planet under pressure. 12 months ago, I was given an incredible opportunity to upskill, network, and learn, to explore some of the remotest diving locations on the planet, push my limits with scientific and technical diving, and ultimately discover which path I want to pursue to protect our underwater world. My journey took me 300 kilometres off the North Australian coast on a 3.5-week scientific expedition on board sailing research vessel Melita. This journey with Reef Life Survey took us over 1,000 nautical miles along the Kimberley coast and Timor Sea. Here, we visited over 75 sites, rolling out transects to quantify the biodiversity of these ecosystems. This expedition reconnected me with my deep love of sailing and sparked a new passion for remote expedition science. I relished the rhythms of living and working at sea and gained many skills, both practical and scientific. Building on these experiences, I was drawn to another isolated reef ecosystem in the far reaches of the Kimby province in Papua New Guinea. Here I stayed at Walindi Plantation Resort, assisting anemone fish researchers at Mahoney and Nadari Conservation Organisation as they studied the recovery of these reefs from a large bleaching event. Witnessing the impacts of environmental stress in such a remote area illustrated to me the widespread impact we are having on our marine ecosystems. Faced with these challenges, I wanted to focus on solutions and travelled to the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology, Japan, to learn about some of the novel technologies used at the forefront of marine research. eDNA, or environmental DNA, allows researchers to detect the species present in an area using just a water sample. This promising technique is revolutionising the way we conduct marine biodiversity surveys. While in Japan, I also assisted with some diving fieldwork through the University of Ryukyus. Witnessing beautiful limestone caverns and complex reef systems thriving in such close proximity to an industrialised coastline was fascinating. Of course, solutions don't always need to be technological. At their core, they have to involve people. This was an important lesson I learned during my time with the Coastal Conservation and Education Foundation in the Philippines. Here, I witnessed the government liaison necessary to protect the largest double barrier reef in the world, and participated firsthand in meetings and consultations with local communities. My time with CCEF showed me the people power necessary to manage marine protected areas, all the way from grassroots to government. I was also eager to gain experience in marine policy, so while in Indonesia, I went to visit the Regional Secretariat for the Coral Triangle Initiative on coral reefs, fisheries and food security, a multilateral treaty between 6 nations. This showed me the importance of international collaboration as one of the key levers to bridge the gap between science and management. So, if people are central to these solutions, citizen science is a tool we can use to empower communities to take action. Coral Watch is a global citizen science program that integrates public outreach with reef monitoring and education. Used in over 80 countries, the Coral Health Chart is a simple tool that uses coral colours to make a visual assessment of reef health and bleaching. During my scholarship, I wanted to continue my passion for teaching and science communication, so I made it my mission to share this program with as many people as possible. Throughout my travels, I presented Coral Watch workshops to 10 different host organisations, building capacity for communities from 6 countries to do their own reef monitoring. After immersing myself in the world of science and solutions, I knew it was time to start expanding my own toolkit. So I undertook an intensive ADAS scientific diver course in the silty waters of Sydney Harbour, completing search patterns, surveys and numerous rescue drills. I trialled new equipment for the first time, like full face masks, sling tanks and topside communications. Diving in these conditions was a great test of our task loading capabilities. I came away with a strong appreciation of the safety standards needed to work in an occupational dive environment. I also completed my dive master training at the largest PADI dive centre in the world, Ban's Dive Resort in Koh Tao, Thailand. This course not only made me a better diver, but also taught me how incredibly rewarding it can be to coach new divers through challenges underwater. Ban's Dive Centre is leading the way with sustainability initiatives. Everything from on-site wastewater treatment, biogas, their organic farm, and even producing their own soaps and cleaning products from compost at the resort. This experience with sustainable tourism continued at my next host, Rodney Fox Shark Expeditions. Being certified as a cage captain while on board would have to be one of my most unusual training experiences. To be in the water with these apex predators truly demonstrated how ecotourism can help shift perspectives from one of fear to awe and appreciation. I also had the opportunity to snorkel with the endangered Australian sea lion, and seeing their playful antics firsthand was a real joy. My time working as part of a crew gave me a real sense of camaraderie, family and companionship, and reaffirmed how I love working at sea. Of course, my training extended beyond just refining my diving skills. I've always been an avid photographer and videographer, but never had access to an underwater housing. So this year really opened up a new world of possibilities for me, as I continued to build my storytelling proficiency in a range of different environments and conditions. In North Sulawesi, Indonesia, I was hosted by Murex Dive Resorts and Eco Divers Lembe, the perfect training ground for my macro and wide-angle photography. These experiences reinforced to me that photos and videos are an important tool, not just to capture the stunning beauty of our oceans, but also to convey the significant impacts that we are causing underwater. Building on this, interactions with the media turned out to be a constant thread throughout my travels. No more clearly was this evident than when I captured drone footage of illegal fishing in the Rolly Shoals Marine Park, which led to interviews with 2 different TV channels. Many other opportunities popped up during my year, whether this was speaking about bleaching events on the ABC radio or being interviewed in the ice for a Swedish documentary. Through these experiences, I learned important lessons in working with the media, storytelling, and advocacy. After a year of expanding my skill sets, my scholarship also presented a unique opportunity to put myself under pressure and push the boundaries of what I was physically and mentally capable of. Freediving presented the perfect opportunity to test these limits. So when the opportunity came up to attend Deep Week in Taiwan, the world's largest freediving retreat, I leapt at the chance. Here, over 100 divers joined to study under the guidance of Adam Stern. After just 8 days of training, I reached a depth of 40 meters and even managed to dive to 27 meters without fins. The sensation of freefall, as negative buoyancy takes over and you descend motionless into the blue, is something that I'll never forget. Freediving taught me that I was capable of more than I had dreamed possible for myself, and it was the community of passionate, like-minded people here at Deep Week that allowed us to thrive. I also had the opportunity to push my boundaries in a completely different way, under the ice. So I travelled to Finland to join the very first polar scientific diving course run by the Finnish Scientific Diving Academy. Based on a freshwater lake in Kilpisjärvi, the course covered everything from ice hole management, snowmobile handling, surface tendering, and sampling methodologies under the ice. Situations like managing a dive team in conditions of -20 wind chill, dealing with free-flowing regulators, and even our dry suits freezing up post-dive gave a unique insight into the practical challenges of working in a polar region. Indeed, the poles are one of the most fragile regions under pressure from climate change, and I came away feeling well equipped for future work in these areas. I came to this scholarship because I wanted to explore how I can best direct my efforts to preserve our blue planet in future. This journey has taken me through several unique chapters, those of science, training, and pushing boundaries. 7 years ago, it was witnessing a bleaching event that set me down this path. Now, throughout my travels, I've seen these climate impacts unfold globally. As I record this video, the Great Barrier Reef is experiencing its 5th mass bleaching event in 7 years. These dramatic events are a warning sign, a beaming white distress beacon for us to act before it's too late. While some parts of this journey have been incredibly challenging, others have been incredibly rewarding. I began this scholarship with 3 key goals: to build my diving proficiency through scientific and technical training, to explore the art and technique of effective science communication, and to discover the diversity of career trajectories within marine science. Since the start of this year, I've put myself under pressure, developing new skills and training for an array of qualifications. I've gained exposure to the many ways that researchers, communicators, policymakers, dive operators, and not-for-profits are all contributing to conservation in unique and important ways. I've explored from the tropics to the poles, surveying some of the most remote reefs in Australia, freedived to the depths of the ocean, and ventured beneath the ice in the Arctic Circle. Coming to the end of this journey, I know that I will continue to advocate for our oceans. I've discovered a newfound passion for working at sea and have confidence that teaching and science communication will remain at the core of what I do, to use my knowledge and passion to inspire those around me. To the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society, thank you. This journey of transformative experiences has catalysed my career, giving me skills and qualifications in just 12 months that would have otherwise taken years to achieve. It's enabled me to learn and grow so much in such a short amount of time, and expanded my perspective of what's possible with my career to global horizons. I'm so incredibly grateful for the connections and opportunities the scholarship has already provided for me. Equipped with these new scientific skills, storytelling experience, and an even deeper sense of purpose for the future, I can't wait to see where the rest of my journey will take me. Coming to the end of this journey, I've met an incredible network of passionate ocean advocates, mentors and friends, all working to protect our underwater world.
Okie dokie. So, yes, that was like a very whirlwind tour of my scholarship year. There's a lot jam-packed in there, so I'm going to try and unpack it for you a little bit and go into a bit more detail about each of those things that you got a little snippet of. So yeah, the title of my film and sort of presentation is Under Pressure, because it reflects this idea of our planet that's under pressure, but also, you know, the pressures that I put myself under during the year, and also like the physiological pressure that our bodies go under when we dive. So a bit of a like triple meaning going on there. As you know as well now, that scholarship program is actually sponsored by Rolex. So they are the ones who provide the funding for the scholars each year, which we're incredibly grateful for. All right, so a couple things that weren't in the video, 3 things that I never expected to happen during my scholarship year. Almost being exploded by a World War II bomb when I was in the UK. Yes, it was like a 6-hour delay and thousands of people evacuated and all of that kind of fun stuff. Something I didn't expect. Being pulled on stage by a group of mimes while on board a ferry in Finland and Sweden. Again, something I didn't expect to happen. And finally, as you now know from the film, having the opportunity, or I'm not sure it's necessarily a good thing, but being able to film illegal fishing in a highly protected marine park in Western Australia called the Rolly Shoals. And these illegal fishermen were coming over from Indonesia. And yeah, I'm happy to go into a bit more detail about that later on in the presentation. But yeah, 3 things I didn't expect to happen during my scholarship year. So this whole experience both started and finished in New York. So because the scholarship is founded in America, they have a really strong legacy there. It's been running for about 50 years. So each year, because of some of the contacts and sponsors of the society, the scholarship ceremony is held annually in New York, which is like again, not somewhere I probably would have traveled to ordinarily. So that was a really unique experience to get to go there. Pictured here are my other two fellow scholars for 2023. This is Lucy Penny from the UK and Janice Grisby from the USA. And they're both incredible women in their own right. The most recent trip that I actually got to do as part of my scholarship year was traveling to the Galapagos. Really tough life, I know. But something that I wanted to explore during my scholarship year was actually the expedition world, in the sense of expedition boats who take guests to remote locations as a style of like adventure tourism. And I wanted to gain my own perspectives on this. So I joined Lindblad Expeditions, one of the sponsors of the scholarship, aboard their ship in the Galapagos. They've got 3 ships there. I think they're even adding more now. One of the really cool things about their policies over there, and this is not just for Lindblad, is that they have to employ local residents. So you have to be Ecuadorian in order to live and work in the Galapagos for tourism purposes. So it keeps it like a lot more sustainable and enables that community to benefit from the type of tourism that's going on there. And this is just some of the wildlife and megafauna I got to see while I was there. So it's a place of incredible geological activity, if there's any physical geographers in the room, but also incredible biological diversity. And I would go back in a heartbeat. So that was my most recent trip. But if we jump back right to the beginning, I came into the scholarship with 3 key goals. And those were to work on my science communication skills, to explore my scientific and technical diving and upskill in this as much as possible, and to explore different career pathways within marine science. And I think I did all of these fairly well, which is really nice to reflect on. So if we come to the end of my year and look back, I visited 12 different countries. You can see them listed on the screen there. I did over 150 dives, and I spent over 30 days at sea, which was actually something I really enjoyed. Throughout the course of the year, I visited around 20 different hosting organizations, did media interviews, and coral watch workshops while I was there. And I think quite a fun fact is I experienced a water temperature range of 2 degrees to 31 degrees Celsius, which is kind of interesting. So from the Barrier Reef to the Arctic Circle in Finland. Yeah, so that's just like some fun facts and stats from my year. I also had the opportunity to gain a range of really valuable qualifications during my year, like certifications that allow me to teach in the diving industry, or even work as a professional occupational diver in Australia, and I gained some freediving certs as well. So lots of valuable skill sets here. So with all of that in mind, if we come back to these key pillars that sort of like evolve throughout my year, I would categorize them into science and solutions, outreach and advocacy, and training and pushing boundaries. And I'm going to go through each of those ones in turn to sort of give you a few themes to like group these experiences around, so it makes a bit more sense. So if we jump into science and solutions, one of my first and one of my favorite trips of my whole year was that sailing research expedition that you saw with Reef Life Survey. And this was absolutely fantastic. Some of the best diving I've done in Australia. And I probably also learned the most on this trip in terms of like fish ID skills and practical skills like sailing. So yes, we had the opportunity to explore some of the most remote reefs in Australia, which was a real privilege. This is a little video from one of my favorite dives on this trip. You can see there that the glassfish are so in the water that we can barely see our transect tape that we're trying to survey to quantify the life in that area. So yes, in just 3.5 weeks with just 4 crew, we sailed over 1,000 nautical miles, surveyed 75 sites, and I individually completed around 40 dives. So we're doing 2 to 3 dives a day, plus like some days just for sailing, doing well, I'll explain the survey methods in a second. But yeah, it was like a pretty intensive, pretty amazing trip. On this journey, we sailed all the way from Darwin down to Port Hedland. And you can see on the map, we're actually closer to Indonesia than to Australia on some of these sites. We were blessed with some really remarkable conditions while we were out on this trip. Glassy days where the ocean felt like a mirror and you could basically see through. But we also had a few rough days where you can see this swash is washing us back and forth, and it was actually kind of difficult to hold a position on the transept. So in terms of what we were actually doing out there, I've talked about this sort of citizen science or science project that we were doing, but the methodologies basically involve getting a 50-meter transect tape, laying that out underwater on the reef and recording the life and the fish and the invertebrates that you see. It's a technique called underwater visual sensors. And it involves, a team of individuals who survey together, or they get sort of taken in turns one after one another. And someone will go through and do all of the sort of big fish in like a 5-meter radius around, and someone will go through and do all of the cryptic small fish and the invertebrates. As you can see, there's 2 stages to the methodology there. We also take photo quadrats as well to quantify the coral cover. One of the things is as well, like when people get really good at this, they will know the fish underwater. But as you're learning, we take down cameras with us. And so if there's ever a fish that we're not sure about, we'll take a photo of it. And many hours are spent afterwards up on the boat as we're processing data, IDing some of these fish. I was actually really lucky on this trip. I got to sail with Graham Edgar, who is the founder of the project. And that man has like a photographic memory. You could just say, give a rough description of a fish and he'd be like, oh yes, this page of the book that I wrote. No, he's not as pretentious as that. He's very down to earth. But yeah, amazing man, photographic memory, great with IDs. I think, yeah, the thing that I actually really loved about this trip was the practical skills that I was able to gain from it. This routine of getting up in the morning, setting the sails, moving to a new site, cooking your lunches and your dinners, and lowering and raising the dinghy and filling tanks, all of these really practical skills that are also really important to science when you're doing fieldwork. I really enjoyed that aspect. I think something that was also super special about this trip was that we got to survey not only some really remote sites, but we got to do some exploratory work. So we think that, to our knowledge, we surveyed some remote oceanic shoals that have not been surveyed with this methodology before, or possibly ever, which is pretty cool to think about, that we were out there getting the first data for some of these reefs. Right, so that takes that journey to an end. You can see it's also my desktop background at the moment, which is kind of fun. On the note of reef ecosystems, though, I was also able to spend some time at Wilindi Plantation Resort. So this is up in Papua New Guinea. I got to visit an active volcano while I was there, again, for the geologists in the room. Pretty spectacular. I got to see some of the biggest sea fans of my life. Again, incredible. And we got to, I got to learn about some really novel research into anemone fish recovery. So specifically anemones. So anemones, like corals, also go through a bleaching process when they get stressed. And so this lovely researcher, Melissa, I got to shadow her. She monitors over 100 anemones there for over 6 months. It's a really intensive study. But because of that, she's able to document the environmental variables that are changing and what's happening on the ground or on the sea or on the reef floor with these fish. Again, happy to answer questions about that later. I think though, like, despite the challenges that this ecosystem was facing, one of the things I really took away with me was just the incredible biodiversity and biomass there. Like, it showed me what a healthy reef ecosystem could look like, with these, incredible big schools of fish swirling around. So that was really special to get to see. So then moving on to a slightly more scientific perspective on all of this, or also on the train of science, I wanted to look at solutions, and I wanted to look at some technological solutions to some of these problems. So I went to the Okinawa Institute for Science and Technology, which is based in Okinawa in Japan, because they are a world leader in marine genomics. And in particular, these couple of labs there specialize in eDNA. So eDNA is an emerging technology where you take a water sample, or a sample of the ground, but in this case water, and that sample has bits of biological material in there, whether that's skin, whether that's waste, just the things that we all shed into the environment. So in this process, you filter that water, you extract the DNA from there, which is concentrated and then amplified to produce more of it, which then gets sequenced in a machine. And effectively, what you get from that is a list of all of the species that are present in that area just from a water sample, which is pretty incredible when you think about it, and like the physical manpower that would be required to get in the water. It's a really powerful emerging technology. Obviously, it can't fully replace surveys because you need to know the number of fish, not just what's present there. But yeah, really exciting tool for increasing the accessibility of that survey work. I also got to explore some beautiful limestone caves there and worked with another university called the University of Ryukyus. But one of the things that actually sticks with me from Japan, I love Japan, I've been there maybe 4 or 5 times now, is the people and the culture. And I recall this story where I was stuck in a shopping centre at night, not in the centre, but I couldn't get an Uber home. They'd stopped operating, and I sort of approached this group of slightly friendly looking young people, and I said, oh, do you think you could help me call a taxi home? And they'd take me inside, and they're talking on the phone, and that one's not available, and there's this back and forth. And eventually one of them pulls out a phone with Google Translate, and they're sort of huddled around. They gently pass me the phone, and they say, we can take you home if you like. And it was just the sweetest interaction. And I think Japan's one of the few cultures in the world where I'd really feel safe to do that. And I think it speaks volumes as to their generosity and their openness. And that was really lovely. Yeah. So from there, I moved on to the Philippines. This is not all strictly in order, but to work with the Coastal Conservation and Education Foundation in the Philippines. And these guys are experts in community-based marine protected areas. So what does that mean? That means when you're making a marine park, they're not just like coming in and plonking it in from the top. They're actually actively working with the community to ensure that that marine park is going to be a long-term solution, that it's going to be supported by the community. So yeah, I got to travel to Bohol and meet with a few different government ministers there and see how they are working to combine their networks of marine parks. But also on a more of a grassroots level, I got to meet the local fish warden Tita and her family, and they live on this small wooden platform that you see here on the right. So their big one was destroyed by a cyclone. Literally 24 hours a day, they take shifts to protect this tiny marine protected area from poaching and from fishermen. And it blew my mind that this is the reality of some grassroots marine protected areas. There's literally someone sitting there 24 hours a day making sure this stuff happens. So it was very eye-opening in that respect. Another eye-opening thing for me was, we think about moving fishing pressure around with marine protected areas, and that makes sense. It's easy to do. You just say, don't go here. But we don't think about some of the physical infrastructure that we might have to move, or there might be an impediment to a marine protected area that we bring in. For example, these fishing traps. So they take a lot of effort to install from the community. And one of the reasons we actually couldn't expand the existing marine protected area was because of these traps. So I think it's really important we consider these things in what we're doing. But overall, it was a really important lesson for me in the interaction between people and communities on the coast. I got to experience a traditional Filipino lunch on this amazing floating village that they had there. And I got to work with like a really interesting team of people who are doing really great grassroots work. So that was really special to experience. A little bit closer to home, I got to attend the 2024 Reef Resilience Symposium, thanks to the Reef and Rainforest Research Centre. And one of the really interesting things I got to learn about while I was here was the COTS control program. And COTS stands for Crown of Thorns starfish. Some of you might know these they're a native animal that has bloomed into plague proportions on the reef, and they come through the Great Barrier Reef in these waves every decade or so. And there's a really big team out there working to control this problem through different means. And one of the interesting findings was they were able to show this control program that they have implemented is having a positive effect on the coral health and coral covers in those areas. So that was a really nice finding to discover. Yeah, so this is what that culling program can look like, literally in the water with an injection that basically causes those starfish to disintegrate. So it's like a very manual method. It's very intensive, so it's important that we can know that it actually is working, which was what they were able to show, which was really exciting. So that's sort of wrapping up the world of science and solutions, which means we can talk a little bit about outreach and education. So science communication and interactions with the media turned out to be a really big theme. I did interviews with the ABC, with different news groups. I documented the illegal fishing over in the Rolly Shoals and got approached by like 60 Minutes, 7 News, 9 News, all these, the ABC, all these different groups were really interested in that footage. And ended up writing an article for a magazine, which was really exciting too. That was the first time I'd had an opportunity to do something like that. And yeah, the illegal fishing footage, again, happy to go into this in more detail, but effectively what the footage shows is some Indonesian fishermen wading through the water with styrofoam boxes behind them, and what they're actually doing is they're looking for trepang. And trepang is like a sea cucumber, and that's very lucrative on the markets in Asia. So that is that's sort of the driving force behind some of these. That's the pressure that's driving this, is like the expensive fish markets in Asia. But yeah, this is like a really important area ecologically, and obviously we don't want that fishing pressure there. So it raises big questions about enforcement, but also like Indigenous use rights, and yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic to explore. So happy to talk about that later. I think storytelling as well was also a really big part of my year and what I wanted to explore. So I visited Esprit Film and Television while I was in the UK. They're like a big film warehouse over there that has these amazing cameras used for cinematography. So that was really cool to get a little window into that world. And I also did a photography workshop with Maddie Smith down on the Rodney Fox shark boat, Great White Shark Tours, which was very exciting. I dabbled in underwater modeling for a day, which was a lot of fun, just like having that experience and trying something new. And most importantly, though, I really wanted to work on my photography and videography skills. So I spent around 2 weeks in Indonesia, in an area around Bangka and Manado and the infamous Lembeh Strait, which is really famous for its macro life. And here I trained both my like wide angle and my macro photography and videography skills, and was able to document some really interesting critters. And so this one on the right is actually one of my favorite images, because you can see that nudibranch is actually eating that ascidian. So they ingest some of their toxins to become toxic themselves, so predators don't eat them. A mantis shrimp with its eggs, a beautiful iridescent urchin. That is a hairy frogfish on the left, amazing animal, and a cuttlefish on the right. This is one of my favorite macro images. Flying gurnard, and a blue ringed octopus. That was my first time seeing one of them underwater, which is really cool. And mating mandarin fish, also really beautiful courtship ritual to watch. And a bobtail squid. Oh my god, they're so cute. They're about the size of your fingernail. And this is the eye of a crocodile fish. It has the most beautiful, intricate eyelashes that are used to camouflage the eye. So I think that photography can be a really powerful tool for storytelling. But aside from that, I think that grassroots work and citizen science can also be a really powerful tool for upskilling communities. So throughout my scholarship year, I wanted to bring a citizen science tool with me. So I actually worked for 2 years at Coral Watch, which is the organization that created these charts. And Coral Watch is a global citizen science monitoring program for coral reefs that uses coral color to make a visual assessment of reef health and bleaching. You can see this data from all over the world, and we're able to bring this into communities and teach them how to monitor their own reefs, whether you're a scientist or whether you're just someone from the public. So I ran talks in Indonesia, in Thailand, Japan, and I think it was like, 6 different countries or something like that. And if this is something that you're interested in, Coral Watch sends one free coral health chart anywhere in the world. I can like pop the link in the chat afterwards as well, if you're interested in requesting one. I think leading on from this, there was a large bleaching event during my year that on the very same reef that I dived on 7 years ago. And this was also combined with a freshwater runoff event, so a big flooding event that effectively killed off the top 2 to 3 meters of that reef because of freshwater inundation. So these beautiful, vibrant green colors aren't actually healthy corals. That's coral that has algae growing all over it. This is a before and after photo of those like beautiful coral meadows, and it just shows that these impacts are still happening and they're becoming more frequent. So I think the more that we can get out there and get people involved in citizen science projects, it's really important, because since I took that first video in 2017, there's been another 5 bleaching events, including that one, since then. Whereas in the past 20 years before that, there was one, which is pretty mind-blowing to think about. All right, final chapter, we're wrapping up, is training and pushing boundaries. So this was something that was really important to me. I went to Koh Tao, I did my dive master. I got exposed to like the rewards of like coaching someone through a challenge underwater, and seeing the joy on someone's face when they achieve a new skill. They also have a really amazing sustainability program here. They're on the right, they literally make their own soaps and cleaning products in the resort from the leftover fruit scraps that they like ferment down and extract like the scents from to use them in the soaps and conditioners. It's amazing. It's like this full cycle process. Really, really cool. I also learned how to weld, which was a lot of fun, just for a day when we did some coral nursery work over there. I really enjoyed that, surprisingly. And like in the video, I also, when I was in Sydney, managed to get my ADAS scientific diver course, which is a occupational level course in Australia. It's different from just being able to teach diving underwater. It means that you can do like commercial level work underwater as a diver. So like cleaning hulls or it's like certain types of research that you might be paid for. So this is a really valuable skill set to have in Australia. It's also quite an expensive cert to get without sponsorship. So I was really grateful to have that for my year. Of course, Rodney Fox shark expeditions is something every Australasian scholar gets to experience. And I think what I actually really enjoyed the most about this experience was not just the incredible wildlife and like the playful sea lions and the beautiful, awesome sharks, but it was actually living and working on a boat and being part of a crew that I found that I really enjoyed. And I think if you haven't heard about Rodney Fox's journey, I would highly encourage you to look into it, because he is a shark attack victim turned shark advocate. He's an amazing man. So you should definitely look that up if you haven't heard of it already. You might have seen my eyes light up a little bit as I was watching that film again, because this freediving training that I did in Taiwan at Deep Week was actually, yeah, well, I would say one of the highlights of my year. And it was something that I'd always been curious to explore, but didn't have an environment to push myself in safely, because obviously you want to be doing freediving safely, because it's, you know, it can be a risky sport at times. So we had in-water coaching, we had pool sessions, we had line training sessions, and we were surrounded by this really positive, encouraging community. Got to work with some really amazing leaders in the freediving world as well. So freediving is a really mental thing, and even though people talk about pushing yourself, you're not actually pushing yourself, you're relaxing yourself. You are trying to get your body and your mind into this state where you can be fully present and relaxed, and able to relax through any like unpleasant sensations that come up around the urge to breathe as you go through this process. And once you get to that point, it can actually be a really enjoyable experience. So I had the opportunity to do that with Adam Stern, who is like one of the great teachers of freediving in Australia, if not in the world, and particularly for his advice on equalization techniques, which are really important for freediving. In addition to that, we had the GOAT, the greatest of all time, of freediving here at this workshop, Alexei Molchanov, which was really amazing to get to meet such a high performance athlete who also is such a great teacher. So he ran workshops throughout the week, and I also did an interview with him on the intersection of freediving and conservation, because I think those worlds are really compatible. That's something I want to explore more. So yeah, overall at Deep Week, I got to push myself in this amazing community of like-minded people, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who's interested, because it teaches you so much, not just about yourself, but your body and your mind and the people around you too. So at the end of 8 days of training, I reached a depth of 40 meters with free immersion, which is effectively where you're not actually kicking, you're just like pulling yourself down a rope with your hands. I actually find that really relaxing. And I even swam down to 27 meters without fins, which is not something I ever expected to be able to do. So yeah, it really taught me to push my boundaries, and that's something I'll always be grateful for, and something I want to explore more and try and train for. But I also had the opportunity to push my boundaries in a really different way, in a very mental and a very cold way, which was under the ice. And so I actually traveled up to Finland to do this. But before that, I had to do a bit of training. So I got my dry suit cert down in Sydney, and then I went and did some cold water diving with twin tanks and scooters in Sweden to get equipped for this, because coming from a tropical environment, I hadn't had a lot of experience in really cold water. Then I traveled to Finland to participate in the very first polar scientific diving course run through the Finnish Scientific Diving Academy. And this was a world first in terms of the type of training available. I also got to do this with one of my fellow scholars, which was amazing. Lucy is, yeah, so much fun to be around, a really amazing gal. So yes, we traveled to the Arctic Circle. That's me in my dry suit, and we had the Northern Lights at nighttime, which was really special. And we learned everything on this course, from ice hole management and surface tendering. You can see us like, it's the biggest chainsaw I've ever seen in my life. It's had like a meter blade on it to cut through the ice. We learned sampling methodologies under the ice, so you can see us taking ice cores there. And we even learned how to drive snowmobiles and do all of that topside stuff that's essential to working in a polar environment, like risk management. So yeah, I think it's like such a unique, beautiful environment to get to dive in, and a really challenging one too. So yeah, we had like such an incredible, diverse team that participated in this course. and I got to meet some really interesting people through that, and it was definitely one of the most unique experiences of my scholarship year. All right, so that wraps up science and solutions, outreach and advocacy, and training and pushing boundaries. So that brings to a close that final section. I just want to make a quick note in here about mental health too. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I think people see this incredible year on like social media and things like that, but what they don't see is some of the stress or anxiety or burnout that actually happens behind the scenes. And I just want you to know that if you've experienced these kind of things, that you're not alone, and that not everything is always as perfect as it looks on social media. So even though I had a really incredible year and I learned and grew so much, I also had some very real challenges on that year too. But ultimately, it was my friends and family that got me through. So I'll be really grateful for them. Plus all of my incredible sponsors and hosts that I got to work with throughout the year. Each one of these organizations is really interesting in their own right. I got to explore my photography, my videography skills. I got to explore my scientific diving skills. And I think ultimately the thing that was so special about this scholarship journey is that I say it catalyzed my career, because when you think of a catalyst, it's something, it's like a compound that allows things to accelerate rapidly. And it allowed me to achieve in 1 year, in just 12 months, what would have otherwise taken years and years to achieve. So I think that's really, really valuable. So a big thank you to my sponsors. This is some of the kit I got kitted out with at the beginning of the year. Pretty amazing. And of course to Rolex and all of the incredible diving sponsors and equipment sponsors that make this year possible. I'm always really grateful to them. So yes, thank yous, thank yous, thank yous. This is one of my favorite shots from the year, and I think it reflects the incredible community and places that we get to explore. So that is Under Pressure. But on a final note, you might ask, where on earth am I now? And I am actually in Tonga at the moment. That's why we're doing this on Zoom. So, here's you guys down in Brisbane probably, or somewhere in SEQ. I'm over here in Tonga, and I know you geographers like your maps. So specifically, I'm actually up in the northern part of Tonga called Vavau. What am I doing here, you ask? Well, I'm working for a pretty amazing humpback whale ecotourism company called Swimming with Gentle Giants. And this company does whale swim experiences out here combined with citizen science and education, and they give like a really holistic experience to the guests. And I just wanted to share as well, I have a super amazing boss here who runs this company. His name is Scott Portelli. He's a Australia-renowned, world-renowned wildlife photographer, and just a few days ago he was awarded 2024 Australian Geographic Nature Photographer of the Year. So some of you may have even seen this image on social media recently on the news. So I just wanted to give my boss a shout out because it's a pretty big deal. So on a final note, I just wanted to talk about the influence that geography has on my life and on my journey, because I think it's an important thing to remember, like where we've come from and what we've studied and how that influences where we are and who we are now and how we do work in the world. And I think fundamentally geography is the interaction between people and place and environment, and that is not just central to land but also central to our oceans as well. And I think I'm very interested in how we can manage that relationship that people have with their environment, ultimately for a more sustainable future for like both humans and everything else on this planet. And I think geography has really given me that transdisciplinary skill set to bring in a lot of different areas that are necessary to work on some of those big problems. So I'm really excited to see where it takes me in future. So yes, absolute whirlwind tour. I think we're a little bit over time, but Thank you so much for listening, and that's my Instagram there if you want to keep in touch or ask any questions afterwards or follow some of my adventures. But that's all from me, and thank you so much for listening. All right.
Wow, I think I speak for everyone when I say that sounds like an absolute action-packed year. Some fantastic opportunities there, both in the science and in the outreach, and also in your ability to take on new training opportunities for yourself and upskill. I'm sure, as you sort of touched on, it wasn't without its challenges being away from home for so long, doing so many new things in such a short amount of time. But thank you for sharing that with us. It's been very, very crazy interesting.
Yeah,
We have a lot of questions coming through on the chat.
Oh my goodness, okay.
So I might just start from the start. We have a well wish from Ralph saying, Sophie, you've achieved so much in 12 months. What an opportunity. May your career prosper.
Thank you, Ralph. That's very kind.
Yes. Our next question is, where and how do you find so many activities related to scientific diving within 12 months? Were those arranged by the foundation or by yourself? And other than a yearly experience, is there any way that others, I was trying to paraphrase, it didn't work.
Yeah. How about I
other
answer
than a
the
yearly
first two,
experience?
and then I'll get to the second one because they're slightly different answers.
Yes, yes. Okay, cool.
Scientific diving experiences in 1 year. Yes, I arranged some of them myself, and yes, there's some through the society. For example, the one in Japan, like that was someone I reached out to independently through a colleague of mine, a lab mate, who had a connection there. The scientific diver training, though, that was arranged through the Scholarship Society because they've had hosted previous scholars there in the past. So we do get a lot of help throughout the year. We have a coordinator. So my coordinator was Joanna Smart, who's a past scholar. And we also have like a vice president for our region. So that was Stephen Andrews for me. And they both play a really important role in connecting me with different contacts and giving different opportunities throughout the year. So there is an amazing network through the society already. But that being said, like you definitely do create different contacts yourself. I hope that answers your question.
Fantastic. And the second part, other than your fantastic scholarship, are there any other ways that like scientific diving around the world and making a living at the same time, like how do people find out how to do that?
Yeah, how do you do what I did? Honestly, to give like a completely honest answer, a lot of what I did was voluntary work that was possible because I had the funding of the scholarship. And I don't feel like I'm at a point now in my career. I'm only 23. I've just started like my first, like I graduated. I had worked during uni, which was amazing. I had the scholarship and now I'm in this ecotourism job for 3 months. So it's not like a secure, it's just like seasonal work. I think like the real challenge that I see, at least from my quite young perspective, is there is work in marine science. It does exist, but it is typically insecure work. So I feel like this is a geography thing that I'm talking about now. So insecure employment, guys. But yeah, I think it's possibly a bit more difficult to find those like stable long-term jobs in marine science, but like contract work and being able to travel. Advice for how to do this: get your certifications. If you can't pay for them, then volunteer for them. There are like ways and means where like certain, dive centers and stuff will offer a certification. Also, actually, this is kind of relevant. If you're female, the Women's Divers Hall of Fame has just opened up for their grants for training. So there's like $25,000 grants that you could use to like go and do a particular diving qualification. So that's something to think about. But yes, just like try and volunteer and get as many skills as you can. But I'm also aware that that's a privilege because not everyone has the time and opportunity to do that. But yes, I hope that advice is helpful.
A very thorough answer. I'm aware it's getting quite late, so we might try and wrap the questions up maybe in 5 minutes or so.
I'll try and get
get
some short
through.
answers.
did the coral bleaching on the Great Barrier Reef occur concurrently elsewhere in the Southern Hemisphere or the wider world, or was that an isolated event?
To my knowledge, yes, there was like some in the Southern Hemisphere, and there was also the inverse in the Northern Hemisphere, but offset by 6 months because of their summer period. And even at the moment, currently, I have a colleague in Japan who says like parts of Japan are experiencing bleaching right now, which is even out of season, which is kind of crazy. But yes, it was a global occurrence.
Mm-hmm. Next question online. Seems like perhaps more of a comment. More well wishes for you on your fantastic career.
Thank you.
And here's a question. So I think you did touch on this. Your scholarship year, was it during or after your degree? If it was during, how did you balance the two? I suppose.
Yeah, it was after.
How did you go going straight from uni into something so I guess free-formed, almost like completely different to a university year?
Yeah. Like honestly, and yeah, very candidly, I struggled with burnout during my scholarship year, because I feel like the type of person that I am, like very much like gives 110% in everything that I do. And so by the time I got to the end of my university degree, I was already burnt out. And then I went into this crazy, amazing, very intense scholarship year directly after my university. Like I literally didn't stop. I was doing my final university exam at 3 o'clock in the morning in New York because they wouldn't give me a time zone conversion. So it was a bit mad. And I think had I had like a 3 or 6 month break, parts of my year probably would have gone very differently. But I also wouldn't change the experience because it's made me who I am. So I think, yeah, time management and like emotional and fatigue management is like a really important skill to have. So yeah.
I'm going to open up to questions from people in the room.
Honestly, can you put the link to the website for the Women's Scholarship in the chat?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will pop that in now. It's called the Our World Underwater Society.
The 25,000 grant. Did you say the women's?
Oh, not the 25,000. Sorry, there's 25 $1,000.
Okay. Yes, this makes more sense. I have no idea how much things cost in the diving course as well. I was like, I don't know, maybe it's not expensive. Yeah. Anyone else in the room have any questions for Sophie?
Actually, on that note, I didn't mention this during the talk, but the value of the scholarship program is $40,000. So, which is a lot of money, absolutely. But also when you start to do international travel and flights for 12 months, plus you're not actually allowed to work during that year. It's part of your contract because they want you to fully dedicate your time to the program. You do have to, it's not unlimited. You do have to have a budget and be slightly strategic with what you do. But I just thought I'd mention that for anyone who is interested about the value of the scholarship program.
Fantastic. We might finish up with the last question from online. Can you talk about the value add of the geography degree specifically? I suppose you sort of touched on how it relates to your experiences in your scholarship year. I suppose, how do you see that that value add going forward with the rest of your career?
I think yeah, sorry, what was that, Giselle?
Oh, and your life more broadly, I guess.
And life in general. I think I touched on this a little bit, and one of the things that I really enjoy about geography is that it brings together so many different things. And I've talked about that transdisciplinary skill set, and I feel like geography is one of those beautiful disciplines that meshes together a whole bunch of different ideas and techniques with its own unique ideas and techniques like mapping and things like that. Because to address some of the world's really big problems that we're facing in the future, it's not just going to be doctors and marine scientists and engineers. It's going to be teachers and musicians and whatever. It's going to be all of those people working together to figure out how we manage this beautiful and terrible interaction between people and place. And that is sort of what geography does. So I sort of think it's central to everything, really. And I think like some of the lenses that we talk about lenses in like political science for ways of looking at the world. And I feel like geography has given me a really unique lens through which to view the world, that it's sort of, once you have it, it's sort of hard to realize what exactly it is because you just instinctively do it. But it's a wonderful tool and a wonderful lens through which to view the world. So that's how I would answer that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Can everyone in the room and online, I guess, if you want to join me in thanking Sophie for joining us tonight and sharing her journey with us. It's been a fantastic presentation, incredible to hear about your story and your year, what you've been up to, what you're doing now, and also really lovely to hear, I guess, one of the things we like doing is sort of sharing stories of younger people in their early career, seeing where they've come through and kind of what they're doing, what their passions are. I think there's something really inspiring about getting together and sharing those stories. So thank you for sharing your story with us tonight, and hopefully giving us all a little bit of inspiration about caring for and protecting our marine world as well.